Hello, this is Tom Cloud with the Precious Metals Market wrap up for the year. And it's been quite an interesting year for precious metals, as we all know. I want to start out by saying, as I record this the last week of December, gold is up 6.5% for the year. Certainly 6.5% is a very good return, unless you look at where it was prior to the election of President-elect Trump, when it was up over 20%, and we saw it drop all the way down to where it's up now 6.5% for the year 2015. If we go back and look at my prediction last year, I was a little bit wrong. I predicted 10% for gold, 15% for silver, and gold's only up 6.5%. On the flip side of that, silver's up 13.88% for the year 2015, and at one time was up 30% for the year, also falling back during the election, and we'll get to more about silver here in a few minutes. And then we had palladium. That's really the one that surprised everybody. It's up 16.28% for the year, and for all y'all that moved into palladium last January, and quite a few of you did on my comments, you've been justly rewarded, and it looks like palladium could have another 10 to 15% year, and that's kind of what I'm looking at. Certainly there are economic events that can make it be less than that or more than that, but in the middle of the road, I still think it'll have another double-digit return for next year. And I do want to say that I think gold will get to 1350 is my prediction, which is about 19.5% gain for the year 2017. That's my belief as we look at it. And those other numbers were 2016. I think I said 2015 on one of them. But anyway, so we look for gold to have a great year. And no matter what you may think that gold's archaic, gold's out of style, I'll show you a few things in a second that hopefully will give you a clear view. But the deficit under Trump is going to get much worse than Obama the first couple of years. You can't go in and spend on infrastructure, military, VA, have this kind of build up. And even the economists that have looked, his own economists have looked and said, yes, we could have higher deficits the first 2 years of his presidency while we're creating jobs, building a bigger taxpayer base to eventually, hopefully, bring the deficit down. But more importantly, it's going to be the spending side of it. As Paul Ryan has already said, we've got to go in and cut the spending and these foolish plans the government has out there. That's going to be more important than the money is going to be created to do all these revisions in the infrastructure, VA, and military spending. So that's what you got to watch the first 100 days, is getting the pass on the corporate tax going from 35% down to 20 or 15, whichever the Congress and Senate vote on. We're seeing Paul Ryan and some of the strong Republicans behind a 20%, which I think is more reasonable than dropping it all the way to 15. It's an extra 5%. Corporations are going to be happy to have a 15% cut. Sure, they'd rather have a 20% cut, but a 15% cut would be very sufficient for now and get us back more competitive with the rest of the world. The platinum was the only one. It only went up 1% for the year. I don't look for platinum to do more than 5% next year. I won't go into all the reasons. If you want to discuss it, you're welcome to call me. But once again, before I get into some of the fundamentals, we're expecting gold to go up to around $13.50 for about a 20% return for the year 2017. We're looking at palladium to do somewhere between 10 and 20%, as if the economy does get better, the spending for the catalytic converter. And remember, the only two places where palladium is mined is Siberia and Russia, that has a very cold winter and shuts the mining down for 4 or 5 months every year, and South Africa, that's usually got labor strikes going on. And you can expect there to be supply problems with palladium more in 2017 than before. But based on the economy, I just don't see it doing what some people think. We may get up to a 2% to 3% growth on the excitement of Trump coming in, but we may not. That's left to be seen. And then on platinum, I've given you my guess that it'll be less than 5% gain in the next year, which brings me to silver. And this is the one that I really feel could have a tremendous year. In fact, I'm going out on the limb and saying that silver is going to go up at least 30%. At least 30% after last year going up 13.88% and was up 30% for part of the year before the drop off. Now, why do I believe silver is going up at least 30% and gold's going up at least 19% are for different reasons. So I want to concentrate on the silver as we do this 2016 wrap up. And that is, I see the fundamentals changing. I see the shift to Indians buying more silver due to the tax on gold. If they only buy 50% as much value in silver as they do gold, it'll wipe the silver supply known to exist out in 5 to 7 years. Throw in China going after solar panels and solar energy, and it could also wipe it out in 5 to 7 years if the Chinese economy hangs on and continues to go to this solar energy, and the demand for silver that goes into every solar panel could wipe it off the earth once again in 5 to 7 years. We did have one other since I spoke to you last. We've had the estimated geological studies worldwide come out on gold at 1 billion ounces left in existence, and at 100 million ounces a year being mined, that's 10 years. Just think if you just bought gold and silver and forgot about it for 10 years, put it in a child's trust or a family trust, there's going to be nothing. I don't care what anybody says. There's going to be no index in the next 10 years that's going to touch gold or silver. It may not in the next 2 or 3 years, but let me tell you, gold is not going away. Silver is going to be used for industrial demand as well as investment demand. But you're going to make your investment by being an investor in silver, selling it back to people that are going to need it for electronics, photograph usage, and industrial uses the next 5 to 10 years. It's going to be a tremendous demand for it. And that reason I'm predicting a 30% gain in silver for the year 2017. And we'll review it next year to see how accurate I was. The next thing I want to talk about as we try to wrap up 2016 is the global investments out there. We have them now for 2015. Of course, it'll take about 8 or 10 months before we have the numbers for the year 2016. But of the $369 trillion of investments out there in the world at the end of 2015, 217 trillion of the 369 trillion was in real estate, and the bond market, securitized debt, and the bond market was 94 trillion of the 369 trillion. Stock market worldwide was 55 trillion, and the value of precious metals was only 3.1 trillion. That is less than 0.1% of the global assets at the end of 2015 was 0.8%. So, I mean, not 0.8, 0.8 or below 0.1%. So if you look at that with bonds has had a big blow, you're seeing money flow out of bonds, and that's going to continue, and it's going to actually pick up. And part of that money will come to metals, part will go to equities, part may go to real estate, I don't know. But I do think real estate has peaked out as we see rising interest rates. I think bonds have peaked out and will have another very bad year in 2017. Equities I expect to go up based on the euphoria at this point to have a positive year for next year, and metals to have a very positive year along with equities and real estate, and bonds are going to have a very tough year, as even Yellen, the head of the Federal Reserve, says she expects interest rates to be raised 2 or 3 times next year, and we expect a clash between the Federal Reserve and the new Treasury Department, with the Treasury Department trying to take more control. But remember, the Federal Reserve is a private company owned by multi-levels of bankers, international bankers, and people that really control the financial world. So we could have a huge clash going in to 2017. So once again, we look in summary, we look for the demand from China for solar panels, the Indians flipping part of their gold because they have to pay a 6% tax to buy gold, flipping part of that to silver. That'll create a demand for silver. And we also expect major brokerage firms to quit shorting silver, naked shorts, and we expect them to start moving back to the long position. The one thing is my pet peeve is I hear all these crybabies crying about the fixing of the thing, and yes, they do manipulate, but you got to remember how has gold gone from 250 to 1130 over 500% over the last 16 years, even with all that manipulation, and silver's gone from $3 to up over or $16, even with all the manipulation. So what you don't realize is when these people want silver and gold to go up, and they move to the long side, and they go, instead of short, they go long. And I think you're going to see that. I think you're going to see some of it in 2017 and a lot of it the next 2 years. So be on the right side of that trade. Get on the long side, except buy physical and keep buying physical and adding, because the risk of where gold and silver is now, especially with silver below mining cost again, is you are truly being given a gift. There's no other investment out there that's a bigger gift right now than silver. So I ask you to put a percentage of your assets in there, and you'll be well rewarded. If you need to contact us, you can reach us at 800-247-2812. That's 800-247-2812, and talk to Dan or Kathleen or myself. And if you're looking for a self-directed precious metals IRA and have physical metal back in that, we can walk you through that, and hopefully you can, get with us, and we can get you set up for either 16 or 17, even into the first part of 2017. I thank each of you for support of our company the past year, and from everyone here at Cloud Resources Group, Mary and Carol and Kathleen and Dan and I, we all wish you a prosperous 17, and I'll continue to bring the most truthful, honest, straightforward information I can to you on these markets, as I have for it'll be 41 years in March. And I just praise God I've had the opportunity to be in a position I feel He put me in to help other people as well as help my own family along the way. So we look forward to talking with you during 2017, and to you and your entire family, we wish you a happy new year.